This is Gemara and Beitzah Daf Yud Zayin. All the learning for this month, the month of Tishrei, has been generously sponsored with Schutz for Shlema. For Shlema Ben Ita, you should continue making progress and have a complete recovery, as well as the rest of our Chalim and Ben Veveya. Chaim and Samer so receiving Rezel Sarah Bas Genendel Shmuel Yosef Ben Heni Afreda Ita Bas Sion Bas Chayesar Yisol Ben Mendel as a present Shavalei Shom Bas Nomi which I figure Shechana Shmuel Ben Tila Nim Khan Rezel Milchaya Bas Mina Din Ina Bas Shin Mendes Svim Figure and Gilan Student Selahuva Rivka Bas Bas Shem Del Tim Lester Besay Shach Israel as well as Choshev Choshev Chaim Devair and Shimeriam Bas Rezel Gitol. And here we go, Yudayim at Aleph, 2 lines from the top, post Yom Kippur, hopefully lots of cleansing. Hopefully it should give us more clarity in our learning. And as we pointed out, we're going to keep on trying to get these daf out nice and early so that it's going to be Yom Kippur, then it's going to be Shabbos, then it's going to be Sukkot. So whoever would like to stay ahead of the game will be able to. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we are 2 lines on the top, Yuzayin Amar Aleph. Yontav Shachal Liyos b'Shabbos. What happens when Yontav falls on Shabbos? This brings us all the way back to the beginning of Shas about 2 years ago. The Gemara in Brachas. Yontav that falls on Shabbos, we don't have it this Yontav, but it often happens. Beishamei Oimrim Mizbal Shmeini Yav Eat Brachas. Oimir Shal Shabbos B'fnei Atzma. Shabbos gets its own bracha. Shal Yontav B'fnei Atzma. Yontav gets its own bracha. Beisel Oimrim, which of course is what we do. Mizbal Sheva. Masla B'Shal Shabbos. Misayim B'Shal Shabbos. V'Oimer Kedushas Hayoim Be'emsam, and you throw in the middle Kedushas HaYoim. And Rabbi Omer and Rabbi points out Av Chayseim Abba, and the way that you conclude what's the end of the bracha, Mekadish HaShabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. The bracha itself is Shabbos and Yontav, a combination of the two. Says the Gemara, so we said Mekadish Shabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. Tani Tanakami de Ravina. So Ravina said Mekadish Yisrael Vashabbos Vazmanim. So the question is, what comes first? Do we first say we bless Hashem that He sanctified Shabbos and then sanctified Klal Yisrael, or do we say no? Do we bless Hashem that He sanctified Klal Yisrael and then Shabbos? That is this debate between Rebbe and Ravina. Amar Lei. So Ravina said to the one who just said over the previous opinion, again they said Tana Kamed Ravina, not Ravina. They learned in front of Ravina. So Ravina said back to them, Adu Shabbos Yisrael Mikadshilei. What's going on? Does Klal Yisrael Mikadi Shabbos? You said Mikadish Yisrael Ve'ah Shabbos. So it sounds like we first sanctify Klal Yisrael and they sanctify Shabbos. That's not true. But Shabbos Mikadsh V'kaimai. Shabbos is Mikadish always, as Rashi points out. Let's see Rashi 4 lines into the narrow lines. Shekadam the Kedushas Yisrael Shal Shabbos. How do you put Klal Yisrael before Shabbos? Shabbos is sanctified automatically. Ela Ema, says Ravina, Mekadesh HaShabbos Yisrael Vazmanim, which of course is that which Rabbi said, and Rav Yosef Halacha Ki Rabbi Ketzeres Ravina, that we say Mekadesh HaShabbos Yisrael Vazmanim, because Shabbos comes first, because it's Kedusha's Kaimi, it's always there. Then comes Mekadesh Zmanim, as the Klal Yisrael make the Yom Tovim, of course, by being Mekadesh the new moon. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, about 12 lines on the top, the 2 dots. Shabbos Shachal Liyos B'Rosh Chodesh, Oy B'Chodesh Shalmeid. Okay, this we're going to have this year, beautiful. Shabbos Cholamayid, also Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. What do you say? Says the Gemara, Arvi Shachris Umincha Mispal Shabbat. We have 7 brachos, like every Shabbos. And during Avodah, we throw in Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos, excuse me, or one more time, Rosh Chodesh or Cholamayid. And if you forget, Machzir Noisei, you have to go back. Rebbe Lazar Aimer Baida. No, you say it in Maidim. Oba Musafim, and what do you do by Musaf? Maschel B'Shal Shabbos. We start the regular Shabbos Shemon Esrei by Musaf. Again, we're Musaf of Rosh Chodesh or Musaf of Chol Hamoed Shabbos. Umisayim B'Shal Shabbos. So we finish with Shabbos. So in the middle is when we say Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, which of course is that which we do. Anytime you have 7 brachos, Maschel B'Shal Shabbos, Umisayim B'Shal Shabbos, nice rule to remember. You have the 7 brachos like every Shabbos, and in the middle is when you throw in the Yontif, etc. Amar Ravuna, says Ravuna, Ein halacha ka'isei zog. We do not pass like that which we said, who says that the middle bracha of Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Chol Hamoed is where we do it. We do not do that. Rather, what do? We do like the Tanakama, who says that by Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha, what do? We say Yal V'Yavai. Where do we say Yal V'Yavai? Of course, during the Avodah, during which is Ritzei, before Ma'id. And one more time, that on Musaf, we do not, on Musaf, we go with Rebbe, like we said before, that we do Shabbos, Yisrael, and Azman. And this is how Rashi here speaks it out. We could take one moment to look at the Rashi, as this is the Psak Halacha. Says Rashi, Ein Halacha Koisei Zuk, Elikitane Kamo Dama Arvi Shachos Mincham Basal Shavavayim Remein Amar Abavayda, which of course, every Rosh Chodesh is very simple. We say Yal V'Yavai. Everyone knows that. We do the same thing of Chol HaMoed. We say a regular weekday Shemon Esrei. We just throw it in to Shachris Mincha. We throw it into Ritzei. Miu la v'chas hakavasei b'hadik amar musaf v'maschal. We don't say that which they said by Musaf. El ba'alach kirebi, like we said above. Dam Rav Chayis b'mekadesh Shabbos Yisrael b'zmanim or Rosh Chodesh b'Rosh Chodesh, and that of course is what we do. Amar Rav Chayis Rashi Amar Rav Miniach Adam Eruv T'chumim Miyantav L'Chavero. One is allowed to. 1 second. I'm sorry. Let's get this daf normal. Here we go. Amar Rav Chayis Rashi Amar Rav. New discussion. Okay, so that was a bit of a segue into davening, into how many brachas we have, where we say the brachas. First comes the Shabbos Yisrael and Zvanim, then comes what do we do in Rosh Chodesh, what do we do in Chol HaMoed, things that everyone knows. And I just want to point out one thing. I said you say a weekday Shemon Esrei. I was referring to Rosh Chodesh of a weekday. Of course, our Gemara is talking about Rosh Chodesh or Chol HaMoed of Shabbos, as the Gemara said, and therefore that's the reason why there's always 7 brachas like a regular Shabbos, and you just throw in the Yal V'Yavai by Meir Shachris and Mincha, and by Musaf you have the special Musaf for Chol HaMoed like Yontif. Says the Gemara, you're allowed to create an Erev Techumin from one yontif to the next, umasna, and you make it tonight. We'll explain what this means in a moment. And Rava similarly says, umasna. This is the quintessential application of the speak of the Yoma. Whenever we have 2 days of yontif, we don't know which day is really yontif. I mean, nowadays, of course, we do know, as here in Eretz Yisrael, they keep 1 day, and Chosar to keep 2 days. But of course, whenever we have speak of the Yoma, we essentially do not know which day is yontif. So it says Rava, it says Rav Chibar Ashi Marav, if on the first day you realize you didn't create your Erev Tashilin, you realize you didn't create your Chatzirais, Erev Tchumen, then you're allowed to create it, and you make it tonight on each day saying, if today is weekday, then I'm making it for tomorrow. Beautiful. And if today is Chol, then I don't, and if today is Yantiv, then I'm not doing anything. And that is the Tanai that you would make on each of the days. Again, lots of Rashi today, because Rashi really speaks out exactly what goes on. Let's see one more Rashi. Rashi says that on the first day of Yontif, the Cholish Yom Chamishi and Erev Shabbos, you have Yontif Thursday, Friday, and you make it tonight, and you say, if today is weekday and tomorrow is holy, then I Erev, then I'm making an Erev today, because today is weekday on Thursday. And if the opposite, then I don't need an Erev Tavshilin at all, because today is weekday. Ubetchumen, Yom Arima, Yom Kadosh, Yom Devar Klom, Ulamacha Yom Ar, Kamoikin, Bishal Tchumen, Ubaisa Abaz, with the man of Shach, and now we have a man of Shach on every single day, and therefore it's going to work. The invention of Rechei Barashi and of Rava. Says the Gemara, Man Damar Erev Tavshilin Rava, Man Damar Erev Tchumen, Rav Chei Barashi Marav, Kol Shkein Erev Tavshilin. Certainly he'll let you make an Erev Tavshilin, but Man Damar Erev Tavshilin, Av Erev Tchumen, Loi Mai Taima, Del Miknei Shvisa B'Shamata, Loi. To create Erev Tavshilin, you don't have to make a kinyan. So he allows you to make an Erev Tavshilin, which is this rabbinic enactment to allow you to cook for tomorrow, to cook for Shabbos. But to go and create a kinyan for Erev Tchumim, that Rava is not going to allow you to do, whereas the other Erev Chibar Ashi will allow you to as well make the Erev Tavshilin. So now we go fundamental. We said in our Mishnah, and we've been discussing the last few days, that you need an Erev Tavshilin, you need to start your preparations for Shabbos before Yantif, so that on Yantif you can prepare for Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. This is a bit of a classic mistake people make. You're not allowed to bake from one day of Yantif to the next day. Really, they said, you're allowed to fill up a whole pot of meat. Surely needs one piece of meat. Still, you could cook a whole box, the same action, and therefore you're allowed to do that and have extra. Similarly, fill up a whole barrel of water. It only needs one jug. Avol, says the Beitzah, you're only allowed to bake that what you need. You're not allowed to do extra action. Of course, you can't prepare from one day to the next. Just like you cannot prepare from Shabbos to weekday, so you cannot prepare from one day of Yontif to the next day of Yontif. The Rav Shimon ben Elazar, you should call tanur pas, a different invention. You can fill up your whole oven with bread. Why? In the olden day ovens, the more bread in the oven, the more it cooked. Nowadays, I think it's the exact opposite. The more bread in your oven, sometimes the less it cooks. But back then, since the more bread in the oven, it cooked better. Therefore, you're allowed to put in more bread in your oven because it's making the one bread that you need cook better. That's the invention of Rav Shimon ben Elazar. There are those who say that even nowadays, if you fill up a pot with more meat, the meat adds flavor and helps the other ones. If that's true, then great. If not, not. Amar Rava, because that's the halacha like Rav Shimon Elazar, that if it's aiding in the cooking process, you're allowed. Again, this is from one day of Yontif to the next, nothing to do with the Erev Tavshilin. You're not allowed to cook from one day of Yontif to the next, but we're having inventions over here. Somehow you would be allowed to throw an extra piece of meat in the pot, which we'll be allowed to use because it's making the whole cooking process easier. Says the Gemara, Yibayalu. 1 second. What is the status of someone who forgets to make an Erev Tavshilin? A classic occurrence. Yesterday we pointed out you could rely upon the Rav one time, maybe once in a row, maybe once in your life, maybe just whenever it's not a pshio as the Rav decides. But what happens if you're not relying on the Rav? What is the status? You didn't make Erev Tavshilin. Hu nasar, so you're not allowed to cook. V'kimchay nasar, are your ingredients in your house also forbidden? Meaning, can your neighbor come into your house and say, you don't have the Erev Tavshilin, you know what? Let me go to your freezer, we'll take out a meat, put it in the oven for you, I'm going to cook for you. Is he allowed to do that? Delma, no. Delma, hu nasar, sorry, that's the second opinion. The first opinion is that it's flour, the ingredients are aser. What's the difference if the ingredients are aser? Do you have to be makne, give it to someone else? If you're going to tell me, not only am I not allowed to cook, but my ingredients are forbidden. So if my neighbor wants to cook my ingredients, he's not allowed to because my items cannot be cooked because I don't have an Erev Tavshilin. So if he wants to cook for me, what has to happen? I have to be makne, I have to give him the item. Then he can cook. The ingredients are not aser, then you do not have to give the ingredients to the other person. Ask the Gemara, what is the halacha? What is the status of someone who forgot to make Erev Tavshilin? He cannot cook. What is the status of his ingredients? Says the Gemara, he's not allowed to bake. He's not allowed to cook. He can't do atmana. Neither him nor other people for him. They cannot cook for him. What should he do? He needs to have food for Shabbos. You should give to someone else, and you should give, and they'll bake for him. A clear, explicit Beitzah that not only are you not allowed to cook, but your ingredients are as well not allowed to be cooked. So if someone else wants to cook for you, you have to give him away those items. Says the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom. Avar v'afa. If someone made a mistake and he baked, he doesn't have Erev Tavshilin, it's usher for him to bake. Of course, it's an issa d'Rabbanan, mid'oraisa you're allowed to because it's Yontif. The Rabbanan made a safeguard, like we saw in the beginning of the parak, whether it's to safeguard the sanctity, to ensure that you can have food for Shabbos. But either way, it's an issa d'Rabbanan. Let's say you went and you are over that d'Rabbanan. What is the status of the food? My Tashima. Let's bring a raya. What you do, give his flour to someone else, and someone else should cook for him. Moving over to Yadayim Beis. And if it's true that if you bake, you're allowed to eat that which you bake, listen, why doesn't the Beitzah just say Avar va'afar mutter? Just say, if you made a mistake and you baked, you'll have the food to eat. You're looking for a case that someone who messed up and has no Erev Tavshilin could somehow have food on Yontif. I'll tell you a simple case. He was over the D'Rabbanan and he cooked Beitzah, cooked forbiddenly. Says the Gemara, what? Everyone I'm sure is listening says, that sounds ridiculous. We don't give advice of something that's Isser. The Bryce is looking for ways to allow you to have food for Shabbos, not to tell you if you did an Isser what you would do. So we do not have a proof from this Brysa whether if you actually went and did the D'Rabbanan and you over the Isser you transgressed, whether the food is allowed or not. So says the Gemara, let's try again. If you have an Erev Tavshilin, you could bake, you cook, you could do atmana, you could hide your food. You want to eat the Erev Tavshilin, Gevaldik. Actually, let's see, wait here before you finish baking. Actually, before you did atmana, you're not allowed to cook anymore. No Erev Tavshilin, no allowed to cook anymore. Neither you nor other people. Someone else can't cook for you. If you're allowed to cook for Yontif itself, if the just leftovers, it's okay, you can use it for Shabbos. And it concludes the Brayso, you can't be cunning, meaning you can't go and say, yeah, I'm cooking for Yontif. No, you're not, and you're really cooking for Shabbos, that's forbidden. Aser. And if you went and you did that, then the food is aser. So what do we see? We see that someone that went and cooked the iser, he did harim, he did harama, he went cunningly. He said, I'm cooking for Yontif, but it was a game. He was really cooking for Shabbos. What's the status? The food is forbidden. So says the Gemara, we have a beautiful raya that if you went and you cooked the iser, then the food is forbidden. Amar Rav Ashi, no. Raya, harama kamrit. You're bringing me a raya, a proof from a case of harama when someone went and was sneaky. Shani harama, dachmi rabbanan tfeimi mezid. The rabbanan don't like people that are sneaky, slimy people. So therefore, they're more stringent than even someone who did it by mezid. So you cannot bring a proof from that case. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Hamani, says Rav Nachman Yitzchak, this price that says if you did harama that is forbidden, says Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that is Chanani. That's the opinion of Chananya Ba'aliba to Beis Shammai, but he's going with Beis Shammai, which we don't basket like the Tanis. We learned in the price of Chananya Omer Beis Shammai Oimrim Ein Oifin Ella Imkein Arev Bepals Vein Mevashan Lakin Arev Betashal Vein Taimnin Alam Kein Chaman Betamunin. You're only allowed to cook, bake, or do atamana. Of course, atamana means wrap something with a heat source. It's only if, says Beis Shammai, you did that prior to Yontif Meir Tashilin, Meir of Yontif. No, you don't have to have a cooked dish and a hidden dish and a baked dish. Says Beis Hillel, one item suffices for everything that you have. So says the Gemara, that previous Beitzah, Beis Shammai, the way that Hananiah says, he's the one that's going to be machmir. So it could be that the Beitzah that says that if you did a harama, the food is aser, that's only going with Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel, who was a mekel, maybe he would be mekel there also, so we do not have a proof. What is the status of someone who went and cooked be'isr, cooked forbiddenly on Yantif, whether you could eat that food on Shabbos? Tanan, we're going to try another raya. If you took a meiser from your fruit, you're not allowed to take meiser from your fruit, but you did it on Shabbos by accident. You're allowed to eat it, but meiser lo yoichel. If you did it on purpose, you can't eat it. So what do we see? That if you do something b'meiser, you can't eat it. And says Gemara, no, maybe only in that case we don't let you eat it because you have other fruits. But maybe in our case, when you have no other food to eat for Shabbos, we would let you eat it. So it's no proof. Tashma, another proof. If you did tvilas kelim, if you divulged your kelim in a mikvan Shabbos, which is forbidden, you're allowed to use them if you did it by accident. But again, so we have a proof that you did something b'meizid, it makes the item aser. Answers Gemara, no, maybe the reason is because you have other vessels. You could borrow a vessel. So again, we don't have a proof yet. What is the status of someone who cooks forbiddenly on Yantiv, whether we can eat that food on Shabbos? Tashma, says the Gemara, we see clearly if someone cooks on Shabbos on purpose, you can't eat the food. So seemingly the same thing if a cook on Yantiv, you can't eat it on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Surah de Shabbos shiny. Don't bring me a raya from Shabbos. Shabbos is more chamer. And the Gemara concludes that we do not have a proof. We have a shayla that's unresolved. Whether if you cook on Yantiv for Shabbos, which of course you should not do, be'isr, whether you can eat that food on Shabbos. To point out one dot before we go further, people I'm sure are wondering. The Gemara said that Beitzah said you do tafshil echad and do what you want. But everyone knows that nowadays, we don't just do tafshil echad. We do two items. We have a cooked dish and a baked dish. We have an egg and a challah. We have a matzah and a piece of fish. Why? The Gemara sounds like it's only one. This has to do with the machlekes rishonim, the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, and that is the reason why we are machmir to have both items, a piece of fish, a piece of chicken, or an egg, a cooked item, and as well a baked item, challah and matzah. And just to point out one more halacha. We saw earlier on the daf that if you eat the item, you're not allowed to cook anymore. So people are wondering, wait, does that mean if I eat the challah too early, I can't cook anymore? The answer is no, for the same reason, because we're machmer, we have two items. So if one of the items, if the egg, piece of fish, or piece of meat is still intact, that's the item that you're cooking with, because we're machmer for that opinion. So if you eat the challah or the matzah, all you can't do is bake. You still shouldn't do it until you finish your preparations, but all you can't do is bake. And of course, we know the minig is to use it for the lechem mishnah on Shabbos, to do another mitzvah with it. But if you eat the egg, fish, or piece of meat, then you have an issue that you cannot cook anymore. Let's finish up. The Daf says the Gemara Beishami Oimim Shnei Tavshilin Masnisa. Now our Mishnah Zoloiki Aitanu, about 20 lines on the bottom. Two dots. First one line is Masnisa does not like the following Tanya. The Tanya learned to the Brayso Summer of Shemin Elazar by the Beishami Beis. Everyone agrees. Al Shnei Tavshilin Shezarach. Everyone agrees you need two Tavshilin. Amanechlu. What's the machlokes? Al Dagu Beitzah Shalav. You have a piece of fish with an egg on it. Beishami Oimim Shnei Tavshilin. That's two dishes. Beis Oimim Tashlech. That's one dish. Veishavim, and they agree Shem Pir Per Beitzah and also Toch Dag. That let's say you mashed and boiled egg and you put it inside the fish, or if you take or you crush up a leek, you put it in the fish, that is two tafshilin. So of course our Mishnah does not like this because our Mishnah said there is a machlokes whether you need two tafshilin or not. We pass like Beis Hillel, all you need is one cooked dish, and that's what I just pointed out, that even though it would seem like we're going with Beis Hillel, there is the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, which we could take 1 second, and this is Taisus over here. Amar Rav Hilchtanik Dem David Beis Hillel. Taisus quotes the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, who's that which we are machmer like, in order in order v'amar Rabbeinu Tam, as you see over here, till afei sarach la'arev gam bepas v'niach la'afeis al erev tafshil, and therefore Beis Hillel Rabbeinu Tam holds that you have both items. That's what we're machmer like. That's why we keep both items. And concluding, the Gemara says, Gemara achlu shavan arizah leibashel alav amar Rabbein aktinan hischal beisasai v'nechlei ruvay gaimer. If you already started baking and then you eat the erev, then you let it finish. We'll pick up Mir Hashem from the